Welcome back to the Between Breaths podcast. I'm Jacko, your host, master instructor and mentor with the Oxygen Advantage, and I work coaching with professional international athletes and teams to help them improve their physical and mental performance and recovery with breathing techniques and protocols. And today's guest is certainly pushing some boundaries of physical and mental performance and recovery, because we have got the warrior walker, aka Paul Harris, who is the first person ever to walk around the UK coastal line path, full UK mainland, not once, but twice. It's like, what's better and more impressive than walking around the whole of the UK mainland? Well, doing it twice. And that's exactly what he did. He called the second lap the victory lap. He's going to go into all of the details of why. You'll understand, those that know me well, that I love a challenge, a physical challenge, normally a running one. This is obviously a walking one, but a huge challenge nonetheless. And you can probably understand as to why I was interested to speak to the warrior walker, to find out a little bit more about what that name comes from, a little bit more about like, why did you want to run? Why did you want to go around the whole of the UK? Not just once, but twice, because there's some interesting mindset there. I myself have a huge challenge planned for 2026, but I'm not allowed to say anything about it yet until we've crossed a few more I's and dotted some T's, if that makes sense. But I do look forward to sharing that with you when the time is right. I've been training for the last year or so in the build up towards that, so we've still got some way to go till 2026. There'll be more coming out in 2025 about that, as I do a bit of some testing of some certain routes. Anyway, this is about Paul Harris, the first ever person to walk around the UK mainland twice. And I can't wait to hear what you think about his story and about his what the lessons he's learned and the outlook on life that it has given him. It's truly inspiring, and you're going to love this podcast. Before we do get into it, wanted to mention about two things coming up for you. If you are interested in learning more about the breathing techniques that I teach, the first opportunity is coming really, really quick on Monday, the 28th of October. So this coming Monday, 28th of October, the 3-week breath holding course starts online via Zoom. Link is in the show notes. I'm not going to say too much more about it, other than if you are wanting to learn a bit more about the breathing techniques that I teach, not just the breath holding, I cover the biomechanics, we cover the recovery aspect, all in this. You can join from anywhere in the world because it's done via Zoom. If you can't make the sessions live, that's no problem at all, because you can watch the sessions on replay and you get lifetime access to all of the sessions and all of the content within. But what we're trying to say is it's starting on Monday, the 28th. So you need to be quick. This is probably the last chance you've got to sign up and get yourself involved in that. So check the link in the show notes for that. And then the other thing is, if you're wanting to become a certified Oxygen Advantage instructor yourself, 3 opportunities coming before the end of the year, all of them in November, but not all in the same place. So the first is on the 1st to 3rd of November in Manchester. That's the last certification of the Oxygen Advantage that I'm running in the UK this year. I believe we only have 2 spaces left as I record this podcast now. So 13 places have sold. There's only 2 left. That's happening very quick at the end of starting on Friday, the 1st of November. So next week, get yourself involved if you are keen. The other 2 are in the 2 weeks later, 15th to 17th of November in Sydney, Australia. Yes, flying out to Sydney, Australia to teach with Dino Gladstone. And then the following weekend after that, 22nd, 23rd, is in New Zealand for the first ever Oxygen Advantage certification in New Zealand with fellow master instructor Nigel Beach. So 3 opportunities if you want to become a certified instructor in those 3 different countries. If you have any questions, just send me a message, probably on Instagram is easiest, or you can email david.jackson@oxygenadvantage.com. But equally, the links to the 3-week breathhold course online and those 3 certifications, the link will be in the show notes, so you can check those out. But for now, let's get on with this podcast with Paul Harris, aka the Warrior Walker, on the Between Breaths podcast. We enter this world taking our first breath, and sadly, we leave this place taking our last. And what I want to do with this podcast is to explore what happens between those breaths. I'm David Jackson, Jacko, and this is the Between Breaths podcast. So, Paul, welcome to the Between Breaths podcast. I can't express how excited I am for this one for a number of different reasons, but welcome.
Hey, mate, I'm glad to be on, man. I'm also excited.
Yes, well, we've tried to originally you were coming on one of the second loop, which we'll get into, of the UK mainland. You were coming very close to my house, and I was trying to organise to meet you there around the north coast. But for the people that maybe, because to be fair, for what you've done, it's not like there's 10 million people following you now. Like,
No,
there will be some people listening to this that go, "Oh, what did he just say? Second lap of the UK." Like, just give a little bit of an insight into what the Warrior Walker is, and we'll delve into what you've done.
man. Okay, firstly, I had so many plans to meet so many people on the first and the second lap, but I walked really fast, and it just didn't hit. So apologies for that, but one day we'll do it in person, like real life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what have I done? So I was in a really dark spot for 10 months mentally. And long story short, I got a message from a friend and it just said, bro, you need to walk around the UK and write a book about it. And for whatever reason, to this day, I don't know specifically why, but I did that. So I set up an Instagram, and 3 weeks later, to kind of try and change my life, really looking back on it, I had £300 in my back pocket. I set up the Instagram, which you've mentioned, the Warrior Walker. Thought, let's just give it a go.
Well, let's just let's just unpick that for a moment, because as I said, you didn't do it just once. We did it a second time, which we'll get into. But so your friend's name?
His name's Rory.
So Rory sends you a message saying, "Mate, walk around the UK," and does he know you as a keen walker or a keen, like, is that completely out of the blue, or?
So since speaking to Rory, he's obviously become a very good friend now. That message was sent to me.
How well did you know him before?
Mate, not on Instagram.
Oh, so he wasn't someone you actually knew?
No, he was a good friend that, in the world we live in now, as I'm sure you know, when you go and meet someone that you've only been following on Instagram, like when I meet you, I'm sure I'll be like, man, I feel like I know you.
Yeah. So had you not met said Rory?
No.
Right.
So I'd been walking.
Because if I did what everybody tells me to do on Instagram, then I'd get up to all sorts of weird things.
Oh God, same.
But so why did you listen to this one?
Well, I was actually so fast forward or rewind actually to before the walk. So I was a Marine for 4.5 years. Then I worked in Afghanistan for 2. And then I lived in Thailand from 2012 to 2019 for 7 years. And that's when I did the 2 years in Afghanistan. Right. And also I became a kindergarten teacher naturally. So, yeah.
Strings to the bow.
Right. And then I had a week's notice to leave and I came back. And that would have been in September. So kind of basically about now.
Right.
September, I came back. I didn't want to come back. I had a week's notice to leave. And I was all of a sudden back in Bournemouth where I grew up. But I've been away for 7 years, and I've got a lot of friends everywhere and still got good friends there, but I kind of looked at everything differently. And I ended up working in a call center selling insurance because I needed to make money like everyone does. And that just took me down the rabbit hole. And I felt like I was in a movie, really. It's the only way I can explain it. Because, I physically was there, but my mind and everything else was back in Asia. Right. It was all of a sudden hitting me like a brick wall that it's happened. And I'm just trying to navigate life. I'm looking around this office. I'm looking around Bournemouth, and there's nothing wrong with Bournemouth. At the time, I thought there was because it's how I looked at life, and I don't anymore, which we'll get onto. But yeah, I was looking around thinking, man, like all these people are just absolute losers. Like, why am I working with these people? I've done all this amazing things, and now I'm one of them. And I just couldn't get my head around that, and it was frustration. And I was really started to talk to myself really badly. Right. It was, if we all do it, but I did it for a long period of time. And as you probably know, it's 21 days to create a habit, right? So 10 months of doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, so I had a panic attack at Christmas of that year. And I remember probably about 10, 15 minutes, I'm crying, I'm hyperventilating, I can't really breathe. I think I'm having a heart attack. It feels like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the first words I say in front of my dad and his wife was, I feel like a failure. That's what came out.
Right.
So I'd just been carrying this like deep trauma around with me. And it just got progressively louder and worse in my head. And anyone that would ask me in real life in person, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
people that follow me now and people that meet me now, that they all testify to the fact that I can talk a lot. I'm confident, but I wasn't that back then,
Yeah.
which uh, a really good message that I want to kind of be the key takeaway of what I've done, because you can start again whenever you need to
Mm.
start again, and you can be the person that I'm talking about, quiet, not very confident. You can lose everything materially, physically, spiritually, mentally, and you can start again. And yeah, I was walking. I
Mm.
started what COVID came around, right?
Yeah.
So I started walking a lot to kind of, I don't know, man. I was a Marine, so I've always walked, but I just loved being outside, and just it made me feel good,
Yeah.
and endorphins would start pumping around, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And
At
we
the
can explain, like science can explain to us why sort of like being out in nature will tangibly make you feel better or interact with the nervous system. So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and but I
So
don't feel
simple as well, right?
so simple, and it's free. And you know, I had this. I love coffee,
Again.
right? And I'd use coffee as a motivation when I was walking. But how that actually happens is I've always liked coffee, but for me it was a coping mechanism when I was really down.
Yeah,
So I actually didn't want to get out of bed. I
yeah,
barely about made my bed, but that was the Marine in me that would never not make my bed.
yeah,
Um, and I used coffee as a kind of, it would be 2 kilometers away, 5 kilometers away, 10 kilometers away to a really good coffee shop.
yeah.
So that would be what would get me out of bed, get me dressed, get me showered, and get me
Right.
walking. But obviously, the coffee then became irrelevant because a kilometer in, I'm already the science is doing its thing.
Yeah,
Outside, fresh air, I'm saying hello to someone. I'm feeling
yeah,
good, and I feel most creative when I walk. But it
yeah.
just happened on that day. Rory, who was following me on my Instagram that I had before the walk,
Right.
slid into my DMs and just said, "Bro, you need to write a book and walk around the UK."
Okay. So there was yeah. So he was probably observing that what you were getting out of walking, and then he's gone like, let's go and do the whole island.
So I've left, and fast forward to nearly finishing it. I met Rory in Brighton in real life.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was just like seeing an old friend,
Yeah, that's
who's
cool.
now a very good friend. And I asked him, he said to me, "Do you want to know why I sent you that message?" And I said, yes. Turns out that he'd watched Ross Edgley,
Yeah,
right, doing his swim around the UK,
yeah,
and he was doing some training at Lympstone, which is the headquarters of the Marines.
yes.
And apparently, he'd been saying he wants to do this swim, and it wasn't as big as swimming around the UK. And the Marine said to him, "Well, why, don't be a pussy, like around the UK." So he then accepted and did that. But Rory said that he saw that he needed a challenge, and in me, from my posts on Instagram at the time, which weren't mentioning really anything,
Yeah,
he saw that I needed a challenge. But he also caveated that with the fact that he never thought I'd ever do it.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a throwaway message, and I just grabbed it, man. 3 weeks later from that message, I left.
Wow. So 3 weeks. 3 weeks after that, you'd been walking to coffee shops, but
Yeah,
then and you were seeing the benefit of that. Someone had sort of like seen how that was obviously interacting with you, and then thrown this out there, not really expecting you to do it. 3 weeks later, you start walking
yeah.
with with a plan, with a this is how long I'm hoping it's going to take. How long did it take? The first one?
First lap took 19 months.
Wow, okay, so just over a year and a half. And were you just stay, was it solo? Did you have anyone, as in,
Set
yeah,
off solo on my own, big bag on my back. I couldn't afford a tent, so I just had a sleeping bag. And I had about 30 kilograms on my back because I envisaged that It would. I thought it would take a year. I didn't think anyone would be interested in it because it's walking. That wasn't really in my eyes at the time. That wasn't very cool.
Yeah.
Uh, and we were kind of in the midst of COVID and coming out of the other side.
Right.
But I didn't imagine that anyone would talk to me.
So when did you start the first lap?
Started July the 19th, 2020.
Yeah, so COVID
Yep.
time.
But
Which
I was so like, everyone has different opinions on COVID, but for me, I had to do something to save my own life. And
yeah.
I don't know, like go on. It was almost, I had no reference really, no frame of reference for how big it was. I genuinely, even with my military experience and all my life experience, I watched a weather report on the news, and I genuinely looked at it and thought, oh, it's not that big because it's all to scale. But I naively thought that, and I'm glad I did because if I knew what was to come, I probably wouldn't have set off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there was a lot of emotions, a lot of I was alone in essence. It was just me. I didn't really have many friends or family. It was just this kind of I had nothing to lose, so I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and I guess there was, I know friends that sort of lived on their own in one bedroom apartments during that period, and
oh,
there was a sense of loneliness for a lot of people
yeah,
all over. And interestingly, probably people spent or tried to, because we had to like sort of stay in, and then it was like when you were, I just feel like the amount of people that sort of took up running or
yeah.
would because purposefully, right, I'm going to go for a big long walk because it was like almost I'm told I'm only allowed to go out. I'm sure there was a period where we were only allowed. Was we only supposed to go out like twice or something? And it was like,
It was. I feel like the fact that I mean, people take for granted their own freedom, especially in this country.
mm,
Our passports and the fact that we can go outside and turn left or right, and we can do
yeah,
all in essence. But in a lot of countries I've been to and worked in, you can't do that. But I
mm,
feel like we were kind of people valued their freedom more, and it
yeah,
almost gave you like, I don't want to spend too much time on the COVID whole thing,
yeah,
but all I will say is that if you came out of that and didn't change in some form of your life, then there's no hope for you. You know, it was a time that you valued who you are. It was a time to think and look at what you want and what you've got and what you maybe want to try and do. And I feel like the great outdoors is now very fashionable in a good way, and that's a good thing.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely, definitely. I do sometimes um, get a feeling of like the bits that felt there's lots of bad things about COVID. Like I said, we
Hmm.
won't dwell on this, but there was lots of bad bits about it. People lost family, but there was lots of things that were. But there were some like really good things that came out of it. I know, like we spoke to our neighbours more than we'd ever done, like back
Yeah,
when we lived, and like I say, more people take up running or the outdoors, like you say, that type of stuff. It feels sometimes now that we've gone back just to exactly what it was like before.
that's the good old human race, bro.
Just back
But
to
I feel like
norm.
that's a good. Well, it's not a good thing, but I feel like that's maybe always going to be the way. But then it's adventures like mine and the things that you do, and there's some great women and men in the world that still do the sort of things that are inspiring, and it's the books that you read and the things that you decide to listen to. So I feel like it's a fashionable thing, possibly that it's always good to shine a light on these things because unfortunately the media works in a way that it shows the bad news to get the fear pumping, right? Whereas people like you doing a podcast, this is how you turn those ripples into waves and make people see
Mm,
a different side to humanity, I believe.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's the notion of fear. There's something that I do like every now and again is like trying to do something that
Scares you.
not fright, yeah, like
Yeah.
to a degree where it's yeah, like
Yeah.
I
Oh,
you know, and hence like the setting off with 30 kilos on your back. I think you said 300 quid in your back pocket, not even a tent, just a sleeping bag.
yeah.
Um, I'm going to walk around the whole of the UK. Did you have a route like that? Because I've
So
looked into this a little bit of like, I've looked into some various routes for potentially a 2 years ago. I ran around Anglesey, which is a very small island
Oh,
just off of
that's good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, in 3 days, right? So the event actually was this weekend, just been like
Oh,
it's
right.
2 years on. So I went to watch and cheer on some of the runners. And after that, I was like thinking it would be cool to run around the whole of the UK. In that, I love seeing everything. Anyway, so I've looked at routes a little bit. There's a few people that have done some various different challenges. Like
Yeah,
there's a girl that's done it solo.
yeah.
You've obviously done it twice now. Someone's ran it in quite a reasonably fast time.
I think it's named Nick, right? Nick Butter Run, something like that.
Yes. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I spoke with him. He actually reached out to me on the end of this lap.
Oh, nice. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but so at the start, were
Yes.
you um, afraid? Might not be the right term. I'm sort of also
I mean,
thinking of you being a marine.
I was absolutely bricking it.
And what were you? But were you scared of
The unknown.
the failing of like, oh, I've
Mm,
set off to do this now. If I don't do it, like because I'm just thinking of when you said you broke down, had that panic attack, and you said to
yeah.
your father,
Yep. I I mean, God, this has been like a massive part of my life for three
yeah,
years now. Well, but the thing is, I can remember it like it was yesterday. My dad actually did say to me, it was almost like a gatekeeper the night before I left.
right,
Uh, it was like the final test of kind of how bad you want it. And
right,
I remember I was in the kitchen. I'd just been spent all day packing my bag, bro. I didn't, I was putting things in, taking things out. Two toothbrushes, two toothpaste, shower gel. It's July. I've got a sleeping bag. I've got winter kit. Food for a week. I just had no
I
knowledge of,
can't imagine. Yeah,
and I didn't have any help 'cause financially I was broke. And I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, I remember my dad said to me, "He's like, you've proved your point now." It's kind of almost like a flippant comment. And I just said, what do you mean? He's like, "You've proved your point. No one will think anything less of you if you don't do this." And then I just remember saying simply, "Yeah, but I will."
mm,
It's so fascinating to me that I can remember that. It's those core memories and the things. But yeah, I did. And the next day, I didn't sleep, obviously. I was kind of scared. It doesn't matter if you're in a good position or a bad one. Being comfortable can come in many forms. And, I could have easily just stayed there. I could have easily just said, you know what? I wanted to do it, but I don't think I could. Or
yeah,
maybe save some more money. Maybe I'll go another time. This isn't the right time. But then, as you know, there's that cliche, there's never a right time, and I can testify to that. So, yeah, I decided to go. I decided to step up to the start line. I do remember having this the foresight to think that if I didn't go, I still talk about it now. I was speaking about it yesterday, but if I don't go, I know I knew that I'd be a bit of an angry man
right,
when, when I'm older, if I
yeah.
get there, because I just thought that I'd always be wondering, what if I went? Where would I be now if I went? What could have happened?
Yeah,
So
it's like once you've had the thought of like, I'm going to try and do this thing, it's almost like, oh shit, because now I've had the thought, like if I don't do
yeah,
it, then I'm going to be wondering, well, could I have done it? What would have happened if I did do it?
yeah. So I took that and thought, well, let's just give it a go. But it wasn't even to give it a go. I just knew that I was going to leave. But I don't want people that listen to this or watch this to get it twisted. I
Yeah.
was so scared.
Right,
I
okay.
absolutely bricking it. I don't. I did. It's ginormous. It's so far. Um,
How far did you go and where did you sleep the first night?
First night was, oh man, I don't know how I can remember this, but my memory's a bit weird like this. But 37K.
Nice. So
And I was
just shy of a marathon. And where did you sleep? Did you sleep rough? Like, where did
set
you
right
sleep?
on a massive hill in a place called Lulworth in Dorset.
Just put killed up in your sleeping bag and
Yeah, oh man. So I'll tell you a quick story. Not very many, but that night it's turned out to be one of the most pivotal nights on my walk, I think, or maybe shaped me as a person. But
well,
yeah,
the very first night.
first night, yeah, I got there. I was absolutely knackered.
How
Uh,
did you decide this is where I'm going to stop?
I think it was because I was tired, but also the military man in me. There's ranges there, so at the top of the hill, just as before you go into Lulworth village itself, there's like these mounds. So I didn't have a tent, so I knew that the wind, if there was any, would go over me
Yeah.
if I this little mound. So I set my sleeping bag out, and even then I was stinking. I turned my phone off to save my battery. I had two power banks; they were gone. I'd set up the Warrior Walker Instagram. It was going crazy. Uh, the adrenaline is pumping, man, and I'm like, what the hell? But I was so close to home, like home, that I even had the thought to call my brother and be like, "Nah, mate, I thought, nah, I can't do this." You know, I think almost if you'd have dropped me off in Scotland, it would have been easier to stay
Yeah,
up
because
there,
you have to get back.
right? But I was close, so that was like another mind game. But I don't know. I just went to sleep. I can remember going to sleep, and the only thing I can remember is that when you go to like a bar, or you're in a school, or you're in an event, or you're outside, and you feel like someone's looking at you, and then you look, and they are. I had that when I woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm in the middle of nowhere on the top of a hill, right? So I'm in this divot, and I just remember looking up, and there's millions of stars. And I look left, and there's nothing there, and I look right, and I could touch it. I absolutely pooed my pants. So I can swear on this, but I pooed my pants. Stag, like the silhouette of a stag, stood right over me, and it sounds really romantic, magical, possibly in a film it would be, but I shit myself. Honestly, I ended up like sitting up in my sleeping bag and I'm looking at it and I'm swearing at it loads. It just doesn't move.
How close is it?
It's like I can touch it.
Oh my God.
It's a big stag, and then I'm like in my sleeping bag, stood up, jumping around, swearing at it. It doesn't move. And I'm kind of like, what do I do now? And it just stood there, and then all of a sudden, of its own free will, just thought, okay, and it just walked off. I then was like, no fucking way am I staying here. So I
Yeah.
took my phone off. It was just gone 11:15ish at night. And I got my torch on my phone and I'm packing everything away. And then I yomp about 2 kilometers down into a church and I sleep on the graveyard floor.
Oh,
So that's also a bit weird for some people, but for me, I felt safest there. And
yeah.
I also just didn't realize at the point in time that every hour on that hour, the church bells went off.
Yeah. Great.
That was my
Oh,
first night, and I put it up on my Instagram because I was very prominent on Instagram. It was my diary, really.
yeah,
And
yeah.
thought of writing a book. It was my way of journaling what I did. But
Okay.
I put it out there. I told that story, and mostly, as always, it was a lot of women that slid into the DMs because they're very feminine in their nature and spiritual more so, I would say, than most men. And they were just like, "That's a sign that you're going to be protected on your journey, and it's a new journey." And I was just like,
Ah.
"Oh man," And then the whole way around, both times, I saw a lot of stags, and I've got really close to wild ones. I've got pictures of it. And I'm almost touching them, talking to them. And I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, yes, it's a nice. If anything, it's a nice, comforting feeling, man.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a lot in there. We could do a podcast for about 10 hours, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and so day two. No, I'm joking. We're not going to go
Yeah.
back. We're not going to go day by day. I'm interested in the. Was there a plan setting off?
No. So, in answer to your question you asked me earlier, was there a route? As long as the sea was on my left or near enough, then I'm going the right way.
So you just went clockwise round, and you were just like,
And
"That's it."
honestly, I
How
had
many
no.
miles? How many miles was it, or kilometers was it?
So, the both laps was 20,000 kilometers. So 6,000, just over 6,000 miles per lap. In It's very hard for people to comprehend that, and even for myself, even though I've now done it. So the best way to put it across to someone is that it's like walking from London to Sydney.
So 6,000 miles. Is that what you said?
The first lap and the second lap was the same again.
Yeah.
But it's about 12,500 miles.
Oh, 12. Yeah, 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 for the two. And out of, because I'm assuming, I think if I'm right, and I'd seen some stuff on your Insta about this, about how as you were going round and as people get to know about it, and then people reaching out, and like, as you said, Instagram's a great way for people
Oh,
to connect. Because social media gets a lot of bad rap and gets bad rap for good reason, because it can be used badly, but there's also great connection that comes out of
so
it.
it's I genuinely believe that firstly, it's probably one of the best things I did in setting up an Instagram.
Yeah.
And secondly, without it, I'd probably still be walking the first lap.
Yeah. So how many? I'm imagining you. I think I'd seen you mention that
Mhm.
people would like, people would say, "Oh, come and
Ah,
stay with
I
us," and
already know your question. You're going to ask me how many times I slept outside.
yeah, well, just what was the sort of ratio,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
roughly, of like sleeping outside, sleeping in? Did you ever buy a tent, or
Got a tent. Yeah, I got a tent. I
just
slept
give
in
us
a
a bit of a
barn.
flavour, yeah, of what
Yeah,
was?
I slept outside on the floor. Obviously, I slept in a barn with cows, and they're really noisy at night actually, because they're like headbutting the bars, and I couldn't get any sleep. I slept in Scotland on the floor. I've slept in castles with lords and ladies. Slept on sofas. I've slept probably with every demographic of human in the UK. But the first lap, I slept outside 3 weeks, and the second lap, I slept outside 0 nights.
Oh wow! Because
Yeah,
someone offered you something every night.
yeah. So Instagram and the ripples into waves, and then there was some podcasts I did. I was always on Instagram. I'm very proud of what I was doing. I'm very talkative.
Yeah,
When I saw humans, I'd want to engage with them because they really, sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever you're into, right? But for me, I get my kind of kicks and my endorphins from humans.
yeah,
I've learned that on the path, like the sense of community, and
nice.
I love a hug, So
Yeah,
oftentimes men would go to shake my hand, and I'm like, nah, bro, bring it in,
yeah,
and you bring it in for a hug. But people were just inspired by my journey and attempts to do something outrageous. But I think the best thing to talk about reference the humans of the UK that I met was that the currency would be that they'd put me up for a night or free, and they'd just say, "Come have some dinner with us." So I'd eat dinner with them and break bread, right? And
nice.
that would usually often be, "So, tell us about your life. Why are you doing this?" And the first 3 4 months, I'd cry every time. A lot. I'd cry because I was unburdening like my life actually, and walking and talking, and absolute strangers turned into friends, family for life, But I'd
Yeah,
never seen kindness like this. I'd never seen. I lived in the news. It just come out of COVID. I read the newspapers. I'd listen to things. I'd listen to people. I'd only ever see what was in front of me. I didn't understand what was going on. It was almost like it's alien to communicate with people.
yeah,
Stranger danger, staying in someone's house. Oh my god! Like, and then now I'm like, let's go. The best of human spirit, nature. I've had people drive 6 hours just to come for a walk with me. I've had
yeah,
people drop me off with coffee in the middle of nowhere. I've had a guy in a van on the Isle of Harris driving his van and giving me a pizza that he's got. You know, and people bought
yeah,
me. People have given me money to get around. People, it's just been bloody amazing.
yeah, yeah. Um, I wonder how much of um, your military experience would have been helpful, and linked to that sort of is the question around like the warrior walker. Like, obviously, walker makes sense because you're walking, but the warrior part
Yeah.
of it, was that is that a reference to that? What's that?
The first part of the question, absolutely, the Marines helped me with that. Um, I actually found it harder than being in the Marines
Really?
because you're normally with people. So you're with like a
Yeah,
group, and then you've played sport, and anyone that's listening that's done any team sport, you kind of you'll have a bad day, a bad game, and then you're only functioning at 20%, but your mate's got the other 80,
yeah, yeah,
vice versa. But when I walked, I was on my own, so I had to go inside myself to find that and to pull it out from somewhere. And I think that the military mindset from being a Marine that absolutely helped that. And then I just knew that it's kind of weird because we have this thing in the Marines where you've done something, you think you've done it, and it's like, right, get to the top of the hill. Like it's this, you're not done until you get to the top of the hill, and it pays to be a winner, right? So then you'd have races, and the last one up would get a bit of a thrash in, a bit of a beast in. And I've always taken that with me. Like it's got as far to be like, okay, 1 more kilometer, 1 more day, 1 more mile, 1 more marathon, but just always get to the top of the hill and then have a think. And I've always carried that the whole way around.
yeah,
Uh, Warrior Walker, I was obviously about to walk, but it actually doesn't come from that. In the period of the 3 weeks that I was getting the message from Rory and leaving, I did think to myself, like, what can I call myself on Instagram? And I don't know if I read, dreamt, saw it, all of the above. There's this quote, and it said, "Be careful what you say to yourself, because the warrior within you is lessened by it." So
mm,
how you talk to yourself, because the warrior spirit within you will be affected by what you say to yourself. And at that point in time, I really wasn't speaking very well of myself.
Mm.
So it's going to help you. Like it's so powerful now. Now I've finished this crazy adventure, and the transformation I've had as a person on the how you talk to yourself and how you think about yourself, and also how you think about what you see and how you look at the world is just massive. So that's why I actually called it the Warrior Walker. Yeah.
Nice. I'm just thinking about the. I'm still getting. I'm still coming back to um, the fact that there was no plan, because
No,
something I'd experienced with doing some of the ultra events is like level of detail in planning makes a significant difference, and then when you were talking about fear, you're talking about the unknown, which was like the one of the biggest challenges when I had my brain injury back in 2013, like this total unknown of like what's going on with you, the unknown of like if you'll ever get better and
yeah,
when you might get better. So the unknown, and that's what I think COVID was very much, not to go back to the conversation on COVID, but it's a good example of like there was a lot of unknowns within COVID, which makes us
yeah.
feel very like it's very difficult to deal with unknowns. Um,
But I think it takes a strong man, woman, person to understand that there's almost a level of being static and not having a challenge if you've planned it all out. Like
I know
depending,
it's wild that you went right. We're just. I mean, it's
I,
wild, but I get it.
I think that's the key in how I did it though. To start with,
Yeah,
like that naivety, you know,
yeah,
and as humans, as we've already alluded to, we are very good at talking ourselves out of things. So
mm.
the fact I went so quickly, if it had been another week,
Yeah. You couldn't think. Yeah,
but it was unknown. I knew I'd be okay, and I knew I had to try. And I'm a really big advocate of that now. Like
mm.
anyone says anything, even I have to kind of, I have my down day. I still question myself. I still don't know what I'm going to do properly, physically. I'm 40. I'm like, what do I want to do in my life? And
Yeah,
I feel like that's kind of such a common theme for a lot of people.
yeah,
Uh, but actually, every obstacle I have now, I look at it as an opportunity. You know,
yeah,
like the other side of fear, you thrive because you don't know what's out there, so you don't know how you're going to be, you don't know how good you're actually going to be at something, and rather than think what's the worst thing that could possibly happen, maybe think what's the best thing that could happen from that.
mm.
And you can start again, you can go back home and run again another time, maybe think, oh well, maybe if I planned it a bit more, if I had a bit more money, maybe I need a bit more exposure. But I just realized that no one was going to come and save me unless I went and did it.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Nothing helps you get started like just starting.
No, and I had nothing, man. Like I had nothing in the sense of physics, things, money. It was almost like a hunger. Like I had to succeed. I had to succeed. Like there was no option for me not to.
Yeah,
Uh, but the whole of the first lap, I wanted to quit every day,
right.
every day.
How far were you? You said you did 37K on the what was on the first day? What was your sort of average you were
I
doing?
would say that the first lap, it would have been probably 30 to 40K days
Yeah.
average.
And how long was that taking? So that's about nearly a marathon. How long was that taking?
It's due to the terrain and the weather, and just the not knowing where I'm going, knowing I'm going that way, but not knowing where it is.
Yeah,
Some days it would take me 2 hours to do 3K because the southwest coastal path's disgusting.
this is brutal. Yeah,
The Welsh coast on the west is brutal. The Linden Peninsula
yeah.
and there, the lakes is pretty spicy. The West Highland Way, Scotland in general, you
The
know.
whole of basically you've named half of the UK.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd usually walk. Sometimes I'm walking at 5 a.m. and I'm finishing at 10 p.m. There was never really it depended on the seasons as well. You know,
Right,
Winter, my biggest challenge was the light. So up in Scotland, when I was up there walking, I'd got 6 hours of light if I'm lucky. So I
right.
get after it. I'm banging 5 6 kilometer hours with all my kit on just to get ahead of myself.
Yeah,
And then again, the second lap really, I finished the first one. Um, I'm on my way to finishing that, and I don't know, man. I had more in the tank. Like I knew I had more in the tank, and
Right.
I originally set out to do it in a year. We had COVID part two, so I
Yeah.
had to stop walking. So I lost 11 months because I couldn't walk. And then I carried on again, and I took a summer job in Cornwall. But I always had that kind of like I want to start and finish. So
Right.
that was the reason I wanted to do the second lap. I had more in the tank.
Well, because COVID disrupted the first lap.
Yeah,
Right.
I had an 11-month break because I was actually in Wales, and I went to have a 5-day break at Christmas. And that turned into 11 months because Wales, then England, and Scotland announced the second lockdown, and I just couldn't.
So you
Um,
weren't allowed to walk.
well, I couldn't because it was if I'd have got into an accident, if I hadn't broke my ankle, I wasn't from there. You know,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the pace I was walking at, I'd have been in Wales, then England, and Scotland. Everyone had different restrictions. It just made
Yeah.
it hard for me, and I
Right.
did keep going.
So
But
where did you stay for 11 months?
North Devon, actually, I went back there because I met an amazing couple called Nicola and David. They're
Right.
like my mum and dad now, and they're only 10 years older than me. But
Right.
you know, I'm their man child, and they're just great. So they put me up, and then I went and did a 6-month summer season in Cornwall just to get some cash in. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, I went back onto the path when that finished and went round, got to Dorset, and like I said, I knew I had more in the tank. I wanted to start and finish. I had such an amazing experience, and I
Right.
heard that no one had done it twice. And my ego at the time, like, oh, that's a good USP to do some. I'd done some public speaking. I'd realised on the first lap that turns out that I want a life of adventure, and I realised that that could possibly be an opportunity. So to take that, the first person to do it twice,
Nice. Yeah.
I thought, well, if I'm going to go twice, let's go the other way around. So I went to London and went the other way around, but most
And which is
important,
your favourite way round?
oh,
Does it make any difference?
I would say due to the length of it, no. Obviously, the inclines are now declines, but I think the fundamental difference is me. I was such a different person setting out on the second lap that
Right.
the biggest difference.
Was it quicker on the set?
Oh,
Were you
mate,
quick?
flew,
Huh?
flew round.
Really?
Did it in a year.
Wow.
My averages went up to 40 to 50k days pretty much until the last, well, January this year. I was on the Isle of Harris.
Yeah.
And I finished in June, so I did over half the UK in that time.
Nice.
The last, the last, God, I absolutely flew around, man. The last 2 days, to bring it into London, I had an interview on Sky News.
Yeah.
That was my kind of incentive to get it done.
Yeah.
They were great. They're great, and they were like, "Don't worry, it's so brilliant what you've done, but we'll work around you." But I was like, "No, no, I'm getting there for Friday morning, so that's how I have to keep myself in the
Yeah.
game." But yeah, I did 136 kilometers on 90 minutes sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was absolutely. I did a 62, 63k day. Obviously, as you've mentioned, the marathon's 42, but yeah, I did 62, 63 kilometers. I had a 30-minute power nap. I got woken up with some pancakes or crumpets and a protein shake. Put my kit on. I felt pretty strong. I was thinking like, wow, I've smashed this. I was like feeling so strong, and I've always wanted to find my limit. Like actually, like Ollie OM, right? Like
Yeah.
no limits, right? I wanted to find my limit, and I thought
Yeah.
I'd cracked it. I was like, I'm a beast. Like I kind of am, but I was like, I've done it again. But yeah, I went to bed. 30 minutes, woke up, early hours of the morning. 2, 3 a.m. I'm smashing it, man. Like I did 18k, flying. And then I had an hour's kip. Oh, dude, like, I don't know what happened in that hour, but I woke up and I couldn't barely walk,
Right.
and my feet had swollen up. I could barely put my shoes on,
Yeah.
and I can only. There's a video of me on my Instagram that my friend took. The one person that was at the end, which I really loved. Um, he's recorded me. I didn't know he was doing it, but he's got my bag on at this point, so I can't even carry my bag. Like I'm in bits. It's every single step for the whole day from 5 a.m. till about 9 p.m. I thought I was going to get shin splints every step.
Yeah.
And I was kind of just waiting for the shin splints to come. But I got to the end. I was in so much agony, but I felt like the biggest weight off my shoulders when I finished. I was so proud. I'm so proud now. And I think in order to find my limits, I found it that day. And I always said that I don't want to come into London. Oh, that was right.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
want to be like absolutely not being able to move. And I thought I'd beaten it. And that last day, I think, was the sign from the gods, the universe, that I'm not doing a third lap.
yeah.
Because it's always, I was thinking, oh man, I'll run the next one.
Yeah, it's like when does it stop? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But there's so much to talk about. There's so we'll do this one anyway. But I'm happy to do another one in person or whatever. But it's
yeah,
such a journey. There's so many questions and so many stories, memories, and insights, and people are just fascinated by it, and I'm grateful for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What's like how hard? What you mentioned there was I was going to ask you about like what were your feet like, or was there any? I'm wondering how different walking is to running, but
Yeah.
maybe slightly less impact, but it's still a lot of time on your feet. Like, what was the hardest thing physically?
The the waking up every day in absolute agony. Props to people that do a marathon. If you do a marathon, you step up to the plate and crack a marathon, amazing. But and I know, and everyone knows that when someone's done a marathon, they talk about it a lot after because it is painful. And it is, and I was doing 50 to 70K days for the last 2 months or so, every 5 days a week, 6 days a week. I did the last stretch of the walk was in a place just the other side of Dartmouth, and I did 680 kilometers in 14 days straight. And the hardest physical side of it and mental at the same time
Mm.
was just waking up, being in absolute agony, not much sleep. Because I don't know, when you do such a long distance, such a big day, I'm so hyped when I
Yeah,
finish.
it's hard to get your nervous system down to sleep.
You know, it's hard to kind of bring myself back. I probably should have done some breathing,
Yeah,
right?
so yeah, they're going to say how much of the two laps was done nasal breathing? When
Bro,
you're walking, nasal breathing is all right, sure.
no, I kind of I've done a lot. Not as actually, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't done really any, man. I was just trying to get through the day, but maybe I could do the third lap with a nasal breathing one.
Yeah. Well, so would you have been mouth breathing, do you think, the whole way around?
I think a bit mixture of both, but if I'm honest, probably mouth breathing, which is not maybe the best, right?
Yeah, but just at a walking pace. I know that obviously there's the steepness of the inclines, but for vast majority of people at a walking pace, even a power walk, like keeping the
I,
mouth closed isn't.
I was doing yeah, basically over a period of 10, 12 hours over 40, 50, 60K
Mm,
consistently, no matter what the terrain was. I was doing 8 to 9 minute kilometers
mm.
motor, like, because it's just
Yeah,
what I
yeah, it's
do.
power walk. Yeah,
Yeah, like literally, I was
it's
running
yeah,
some of it.
it's not a casual walking pace.
I had to do
Yeah,
it was, you
it
know,
just might have helped you well, for a few different things. But when you were talking about like
coming down.
coming down, yeah, or that you wouldn't have potentially got the system wouldn't have been quite so stressed. Like your heart rate would have already been lower and things like that, like fatigue levels, and just being able to regulate it potentially. Well, like
Yeah,
you'll have
no,
to do a third lap, and we'll test it out.
the science behind it, right?
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I've got a
You got
Garmin,
your
so
data, yeah. We'll compare.
they hooked me up with the Garmin, and it's got really good back office in it. So yeah, my stats are usually like my resting heart rate was between 49 and 52, and that's quite good considering what I was doing.
Yeah.
Um, and the calories were, I know I did 8.8 million steps on the second lap.
Right. Nice.
Just these random 30 pairs of shoes. Um, I have two blisters the whole way around until the last 2 days where I was getting blisters off my socks. Like they were just, I was in that much of a state and I was sweaty mess, and I was just in so much agony. But the whole day and the whole way around the UK, I've just been met by great people, and everyone wants me to win, and it's such a powerful. I was always quite often alone, but never felt loneliness, man.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
physical, the real life community was great, as was the online community. But they
Yeah.
kind of crossed over because someone would see me on my Instagram and call
Yeah.
a restaurant and sort me out a dinner. or they'd call their friends and be like, "You need to put this guy up for a night," and you know,
Yeah.
it happened the whole way around. And in closing on both summaries of the laps that I did, it was absolutely a massive physical endeavor, but it absolutely changed my life from the other aspect of the mental side of it and
Mm.
kindness that I saw. So that's why on the second lap I decided to raise money for charity on the way round. So I've done
Yeah.
that giving. It's been great because I didn't have any money even when I finished the first lap to start to give
Yeah.
money away. So I thought, oh, how can I pay it forward? And I decided to raise money for that. But all I have done since I started on the first lap, first day, I was kind of almost forced into talking about my mental health and why I was doing it. And then I haven't stopped talking. And I think that is such a powerful message, but also in sharing these conversations with all walks of
Mm.
life, people around the UK, I left absolutely a lone wolf in my head. You know, I always struggle with why am I this age? Why can't I sort my life out? Why have
Mm.
I not got a house? Why am I not married? Why haven't I got any money? Why am I not successful? You know, in brackets. But what actually happened was that quickly disappeared because I was sharing dinner and drinks and coffees and hugs with all these amazing people
Mm.
of all ages, of all lives, careers, money, no money, too much money, all the things. And what I quickly learned, which for me is probably one of the best takeaways from the war, is that we're all the same.
Mm.
Because you have this perception that because someone's got a big house, they must be okay. And because they got a really nice car, they must be great. Or, you know, and I found that people aren't. And we're all so similar because we all want the same things: love, to be okay, and to live a good life in whatever way that looks like to you.
Mm. I
And
think there's something um, also really nice about, and nice probably isn't the right word, but about what you've what you've done, but then what people have then demonstrated is that having something like really close to home on, I'm going to say our little island, but it doesn't feel like an island, does it? It almost,
no, it doesn't. It
but
never does, right?
yeah, well, but it does if you walk around the whole, if you walk around all of it, but something very close to home where what you demonstrated was not just your own sort of resilience, but that um, how great, loving, caring, and eager to show that
Yeah,
so many people
yeah,
are. And it was like, I don't know, it felt like from me watching it for, watching via your Instagram, like just observing all these people being so like
I,
kind to you. Yeah, exactly. And it was like just here's a reason to do that.
yeah.
I think
No,
that's
I think the word that sums it up is community.
yeah.
The community of people is so strong, and I
We
believe
need a
that.
but we need a. It's like for whatever reason we need a reason to for that to be like you helped your action of going round
Yeah,
and I guess and being vulnerable, being like I ain't got anything, I'm just walking like and that. Then people had a reason to then
help.
show that, provide that to
Yeah,
help.
a two-way street because I help people by helping me, they help themselves, and it gives someone
Yeah,
a purpose, and
yeah,
we all need that.
yeah,
But honestly, man, it's I could talk to you forever, and
yeah.
I've got a book coming out, so hopefully that'll do wonders
Yes,
in that realm as well. But I just think it's so powerful, especially as a man. We don't talk enough.
yeah,
Women struggle with it as well, but you're a man, I'm a man, I'm talking to you, and we don't talk. I never used to talk like this,
mm,
and it's such a good thing to do because I'm sure you've known of people who have friends that have lost their lives due to suicide and due to their mental health and due to possibly not having the you think that you're going to be judged, and what I hope in my brutal honesty, as I've done both laps, is that that's not the case. It's actually the opposite,
mm,
because it's a strong man or woman to say, you know what, I'm not okay, and then it takes an even stronger one to say, no, no, I'm really not okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's we've got this kind of stereotype of that if you haven't got any money, you're not successful. If you haven't got this, you're not. No one's going to care, but they do, and
yeah,
we do, and
yeah,
I think that is a really powerful, great lesson.
yeah. No, yours is it's like a shining example of showing that like if you put yourself out there and be vulnerable, that
Yeah,
there will be people, the people are ready and waiting, we're eager to
yeah,
show
yeah.
that support. I think one thing that it just makes me think of is like, or just a little, almost like a challenge to myself of like, and I guess and people listening, as a yeah, we can feel that it's like right when I see someone in need, like I wanna help them, and it's like as you said, we're all the same, and everyone is in
Yeah.
need, whether they're showing you or not. Like how do we? This is like a rhetorical question almost, for one for us to all think about. Like how do I how do I give that like caring support
Hmm.
without someone being in a drastic situation of like being really vulnerable? Like how do I do that anyway? Because
Well,
you never know where people are at.
no, I can speak from my experience.
Mm.
But I always say like there's four words that changed my life really. And it's hey, how are you? You know,
Right.
I still do it now. But I'd never walk past someone. I'd have my earpods in, I'd take them out. But it just became a habit. But I never wouldn't not do it unless I was really in the zone on on the last part of the walk. But most of the time, I'd just say to people, "Hey, how are you?" And it would always be, "I'm good, thanks you." Or it would end up being a half an hour conversation. I've got to run for a night. So I'd walk past people. There's this old lady that I met, and she's great, and I can't even remember her name, and that's also okay. You can help someone with just that, and then you can
Yeah.
leave. You
Yeah.
don't have to end someone's life, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But she messaged me, or someone messaged me, and said that you were the only person I spoke to that week. You know,
Mm.
because on your phone, and there's
Mm.
people. A lot of people are alone still.
Yeah.
Uh, that's when you get in your own head. But yeah, honestly, if someone asks me how can I help people, well, just giving a little bit of your time, reaching out to that friend or family member and checking in with them, and just speak to people when you walk past them.
Yeah.
We'll start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. We've
No.
mentioned already. Yeah, we mentioned already the Warrior Walker on Instagram. I'll put a link in the show notes people can follow. Or so you
Thank
mentioned the book.
Yeah.
How can people find out when's that out, or what? How do
So
we get
I
involved in
got
that?
I got approached by a, a great person and a ghostwriter as well, and we're in the process now of the proposals being written, and there's some big publishing houses that they're in for that to get it, and next
Nice.
autumn I think the book's coming out,
Okay,
which
cool.
I'm really excited about. Adventure wise, I'm actually off on Saturday to go to Norway for 5, 6 days, and I'm leading an expedition out there with
Cool.
some people that have been through a tough time in life, um, and struggle with their mental health as well. And it's going to just be an amazing thing to do. And we're actually raising money for Calm, which is
Great.
campaigning
Yeah.
against living miserably, so suicide prevention.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm always looking and got my eyes open to do something outrageous. You
Well,
know,
I look forward to hearing what that's going to be. Yeah.
right? Once you've done something, you want to keep doing them again.
You got the taste for it.
Yeah, but mate, thank you so much, man.
No, thank you for your time. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for doing not just one but two laps and paving
Yeah,
the way
oh
for
man, no worries, and I'll meet you in
us.
real life soon.
Yeah, we'll do.
Right,
Thanks,
take
man.
care.
Cheers, mate.